You're
Okay,
good to go.
seeing a lot of names from the past. Kind of fun. So thank you all for coming. And you connected somehow with this Zoom event. So just wanted to ask everyone to check out the SFAA website and join if you're alumni or faculty or former staff. And also you can get on the mailing list so you get the newsletter and know what's going on, and also put in your information in the directory so then people can reach you, or don't if you don't want to be reached, but it'd be nice to be able to reach you. So this is the first memory collection with the film department. And every month there's a memory collection with a department or a group of students, faculty. There's also every month there's a spotlight that focuses on a specific alumni or faculty or staff person. And Maria has put the links in the chat so you can get those. So there's obviously millions of memories of the film department of SFAI. So this is just one small little memory group or group that's going to be generating memories today. And we only have an hour, so clearly it's not going to be every memory of the Art Institute. And hopefully we will be doing more of these with other folks from the film department. But film actually started very early at the Art Institute, shortly after the Art Institute started, with Edward Muybridge exhibiting his horse trotting photos, so kind of even pre-film. And then the department actually started in 1947 with who started? Oh yeah, Sidney Peterson, important name in film. So it has a long and important history, and lots of great people have gone there and taught there and worked there, including Jeff Rosenstock, who everybody knows because they had to go to him for equipment. And then other people who didn't go to him for equipment had him as a teacher. Anyway, Jeff can talk more about himself, but he started there in 1979. And then Marian Wallace was there on multiple occasions as an undergrad for a BFA in the late 70s, and then an MFA in the early 80s. And then shortly before the Art Institute closed, she was there as an adjunct faculty. Denise Hawrysio was there for an MFA in the mid 80s. And then Ouater Sand received a BFA in early aughts and an MA MFA in 2014. So they're going to introduce themselves further, and we're just going to have kind of a fun conversation about life at the Toot. Take it
Okay.
away, Jeff.
Thank you, Deborah. So I'm sitting here with and actually watching on the screen some people I haven't seen in several decades. So this is as much of a memory for me as it is for everybody out there. But as Deborah mentioned, I started in 1979. I came to the Art Institute, and I came with the idea that I was going to be there for a couple years and then move on. And oh, and there's a photo of me, probably when I first got there with Deborah, and I'm not sure who that back of that head is, but anyway, I had a little more hair back then. So anyway, thought I'd be there for a couple of years, and then 40 years later, I found myself still there. And I think for a lot of people, you can sort of relate to that phenomena with the Art Institute. It's a little bit of a infection. And once you get it, you can't get rid of it. And so it's stuck with me, and I have mainly just good memories of my time there. I was on the staff there. Probably a lot of people knew me from my job in the technical staff, where I ran the film equipment checkout. And then I left that position in 2007 and went somewhere else. But I kept my teaching gig there, which I had since the early 80s up until the very end, the last semester that the school was open in 2020. So So and I think that's why maybe they recruited me, is I had a little bit of experience with the institution over the decades, and got to see it go through some changes. Um, when I started there, I like to think, when I think back about the film department, I like to think it was everybody probably feels this way about their time, but I feel like it was the golden age of the film department at the Art Institute. There was a lot of great people, a lot of great students doing really amazing stuff, and we had a really great faculty. It was a really large faculty. I remember there was probably 15 of us or something, somewhere around that. We had a very vibrant regular faculty pool, and then there was a visiting faculty program, which I'm sure every one of you who watching this participated in that, in the sense that there was always 2 or 3 visitors that came every semester from various parts of the world. I mean, and some really renowned filmmakers and film artists would come and do a semester. Some of them stuck around for a couple of years, and that pretty much existed to the very end. So it was a very active program. When I started, I remember my staff job there. Uh, it was a very production oriented program. We were really focused on people making things, and so unlike a lot of other film programs where they do a lot of theory and a lot of history classes, the bulk of, I think, what students did at the Art Institute was production, film production. So there was a lot of activity in my area, which is where people would get their cameras and also learn how to get trained in how to use them. And so it was a really busy area. The the demand for equipment was very intense. It was very competitive. People even got nasty with each other. It was a typical Monday morning, or any morning. I got there at 9 a.m. and there were people that were lined up at the door waiting to be first in line. There were people, I even remember people with sleeping bags. That's how extreme it was. And Marian probably remembers some of this too, because it was really very intense like that at the very beginning. And there was quite a number of students, like well over maybe 150 students were in the program at the time. We were one of the larger departments at the school. So anyway, that's sort of my introduction, and I'll have more to say, but I want to sort of go to our guests here, and I'll do this in somewhat chronological order. Marian Wallace, who has actually has more longevity than me, because Marian started before I got there, and actually is active, or was active, to the very end as well. She, like Deborah mentioned, she was an adjunct faculty at the very end. So she's had lots of experience over the decades with the program, and I'll let her talk a little bit.
Yeah, came from upstate New York in the fall '76 and started, and I really spent about 5 years there. Not entirely. I had a break between my BFA and then I went for my MFA. And it was very much like Jeff saying, a workshop school. And I already had the academics practically covered because I had gone to college in upstate New York for a year. So really it was production, and everyone was on each other's crews and helping or showing someone how to use the optical printer or something. I had several jobs of teaching equipment, as Jeff said, and helping people with their mix at the in the mix room. We had a semi-professional mix room there with dubbers, huge machine. Instead of one computer, you had like this room full of playback machines that were sprocketed, like the film that you had edited on your flatbed or rewinds. So we mostly was just working on films, and I did really go outside of the school, and maybe Deb, who Maria. Yeah, the first slide. Now we had the film festival then. We're trying to restart it now. But that was a whole program. And if you zoomed in someday, you can look at a lot of the people who are actually part of the school at that time, showing their films or judging. And then let's see what else we have. We have, oh, right. Bruce Pollock was a student and he started a gallery, the A-Hole. And we would put on film shows. You could see we were showing Bruce Conner and Gunvar Nelson. You could just go rent them or borrow them from people. And then there was a lot of shows about women at that time period. There was always somewhere someone, oh, we have a women's film show because it was so unbalanced for so long, I guess, towards men. Such that at one point, a good friend, Dean Snyder, said, hey, we're going to have a men's film show. And they showed it at a bar, in North Beach. What else do we have here? We have
a question from Stuart Bass was, what dates were the A Hall? Do you remember, Marian, what dates?
Well, that was 1980. It went on for years. I don't remember when it started, or this is probably around when it started. Maybe it was 79. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We went to the on Broadway upstairs from the Mabuhay Punk Club. And another thing that one of the controversies during my time there was the Cinematheque had its filmmakers who it showed, and other Dean Snyder, Mark Stern, they would go there and say, well, why aren't you showing our films? We're the filmmakers now. But we were always called the emerging filmmakers. And they started saying, how long can we emerge? We started doing on the right, the emergency filmmakers, and we put on film shows. And even there was an insurrection at the Cinematheque one time, and the films were taken down, and one of these types of programs of short films of the current students and former students was put up in place of what had been programmed. It's written about in this Idiolex book that I can read that later if there's time. What Janice Kritzel-Lipson wrote about that insurrection. I think it was in 81. What else? And I actually started this series. It was Sunday afternoons. Every Sunday in the Art Institute lecture hall, we put together these programs of films and even performances. At the bottom, there's one, Richard Irwin did a performance there, and we would rent films and put on whatever was new. And on the right, you can see I used to do a screen print sometimes to include with the program that we mailed to, probably 100 or more people as promotion. Let's see what else we have. Right, these are all postcards that were made. You would go to the Postal Instant Press and make a postcard and stamp them, and we had a mailing list that we printed on labels. We'd rent Godard films or just whatever we could was new and fresh. We were always showing. And then what else? Oh, right. And then the Know Nothing Cinema started, and that was a theater built south of Market where the ballpark is now, on unused land that used to be part of the Film Arts Foundation. And this was a weekly show every Saturday night for a decade, were these shows put on by free. They were all free. There was no nothing meant. There was no money. You would get your own audience, and you would oh yeah, no nothing meant something was happening at all times. You can see we had George Kuchar would show there, Bruce Conner would show, Mike Henderson, whoever. We would get them in there, and everyone was happy to show there. Bruce Bailey had a show there, Lenny Lipton, and the schools would bring their films there. And then any cafe or anywhere they'd let you show films. We'd show up with our 60 millimeter projector and show our films. And then this was sort of a Cinematheque versus Know Nothing show, trying to just compare all the films that were being shown at each venue. And it was always talked up as a big controversy, maybe more than it really was. And what do I have any more? Is that it? Oh, right. And this was the program from that show. Those are the two sides of the poster. Know Nothing versus Cinematheque. A little hard to read here. And oh, and then everyone was saying film's dead. Film is dead. And so every year we had a show called the Help Keep Film Dead show. And there's one of the posters. And these were all made with like pressure letters and typewriters. I mean, no one had a computer spitting out typesetting. So everything was all done by hand and mail and stamped, licking every stamp. Maybe is that my last show poster? Yeah, and there I am back there in Deborah Fort's dressing room she built.
Yeah, and I should point out is in the back there, if we can you go back to that last slide? There's a shot of Roy Ramsing, who is sadly not with us anymore. But Roy was a fixture of the film department in fact, Roy was one of the people who hired me in 1979, and so he was already running the technical staff and was there for a number of decades, and then he moved on. But he was an important fixture in the department for many years, and was sorely missed when he left. Yeah.
Oh yeah. One other controversy when I was there was people were being failed from their masters for making narrative films. Were you there?
I remember that. I remember that, there was this, and this was a thread that ran through the program for my entire time there. It was what was considered like proper film art, and there was a lot of debate and there was a lot of infighting about it. And I have to freely admit that some of the infighting got ugly at times. There were people that felt that they had the final word on what film art was. But I do remember the controversy that Marian's referring to, which was early on. There were a couple people that didn't make it through the MFA program because they didn't make the right kind of art. It was too narrative, and there was always that tension going on. And it sort of reminds me of it's a small anecdote which happened maybe in the late 90s or early 2000s in Studio 8, which was, one of our two film studios where most of the production was. In fact, that's where George Kuchar had shot almost all of his class films, up in Studio 8. And at one point, everything at the Art Institute, as you all can remember, was always slightly funky. And at one point, we got some money together and we had a grid built to hang lights from. And basically, it was just a bunch of pipes that were suspended from the ceiling, which you could attach lighting to. And one of the faculty was really upset because, as they put it to me, that's movies. We don't do movies here. And so, I was always amused by that because, as most of you know, lighting is critical, particularly if you're shooting film indoors. In the past, we had like lights strung up, with tape or something. And, here we actually had a semi-professional grid that we can hang a light. And so that created a little bit of a stir. And there was always that tension. And, maybe that tension actually, produced some good things in the end, but it was at times difficult and frustrating.
Right, yeah.
But I did want to ask Marian a question, which I'm going to ask all the people here on the panel. I'm always curious what brought you to the Art Institute. Like what is it about the place that attracted you? What did you think you were going to get out of it? And then, of course, did you get what you were expecting?
Well, I think I wanted to move to California. Is why I went.
And I should just interject that is usually the number one response I get from people when I ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought it was great because you could just do what you wanted to do. I mean, it was very unstructured. There was no core courses you took filmmaking 1, filmmaking 2, and then likewise with drawing and whatnot. But you could take any class in the school. You didn't really have a major. I mean, I was sort of split between film and I was doing a lot of drawing and painting. And I thought, well, if I take film, I can get a job later. So I can always paint. So, and I did work in film commercially for a decade or so. But anyway, what I liked was the non-structuredness of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I should point out that Marian did sort of parlay her degree into some gainful employment. Unlike a lot of people who graduated from art school, Marian actually made some money from her film degree. So that was, while she was continuing to make her art. So, that was a quite an accomplishment, I thought. Anyway, should we move on to let's go to Denise, who going in the chronological order. Denise was there, came from London, is that correct?
No,
Yeah.
no.
No.
Well, I am in London now, but I'm not from London originally.
Oh, okay. Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit of your background?
Sure. Hi. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, and I came to the Art Institute in 81. I can't remember exactly, 81, or was it 80, or, I think it was 81. Anyways, I did fall in love with the Art Institute, but, and to answer your question, Jeff, it was a similar thing about the openness and the experimentation that I felt and saw there. I started in when I did get accepted and started at the Art Institute. I started off in printmaking. So my BFA from Canada, Queens, was focusing on printmaking. And when I started at the Art Institute, and I guess because of the whole huge variety of things that were going on, which I had not been exposed to in my education in Canada, it opened up my eyes in that sense, that classic sense of what was possible, particularly in art, So I started thinking about this idea of taking printmaking in a different direction. Yeah, that's a good example. So I started to move what I used to say is beyond the frame, which meant that I was working in an installational context. And as you can see here, I use print, video, not video, sorry, Super 8 and sound. You can't see the sound there, but and I did 2 installations. This one was for the Cinematheque that Steve Anker curated. He curated a group of us who were working in this idea of beyond the frame, looking at the materiality of the moving image, or in my case, the moving image and the still image, and the sound. And then also I worked with dollies. You can see on this. This is an installation I did using offset print and Super 8 and Super 8 projectors and dollies. The projectors were on these dollies and they could move around the space. And again, it was also this idea of time-based performative element that my earlier printmaking was doing, and then moving it into, like I said, into the film space, the filmic space. But also I was coming from the idea of the white cube as well, the idea of bringing in the film element into the white cube and activating it that way. And I'll just quickly say, when I was doing this with print in the printmaking department, the printmaking department were very annoyed, and they told me that I wasn't, mastering the printmaking. So at the same time, I approached the film department and submitted this work and got accepted into the MFA print making. I mean, sorry, filmmaking. So I transitioned from print into film. So that was the beginning for me there. And it was like wholly exciting for me. I had, great teachers like Janice and Al, and I had Tony Sinden at the time, who was a British filmmaker, and he was super influential with the artists that he brought in, and showed us work like with David Hall or Peter Goodall, Guy Sherwin, and I mean, in terms of it influencing my life, that's why I'm in Britain today, or in London. I came to London to do my last semester as an independent study with these people, with Tony and Guy Sherwin particularly, and on the interest that they were doing, the interest of how they were making work, filmic work, cinematic work, with a structuralist approach or a conceptual approach, or and they also introduced me to the theorists here as well, like Al Rees, who talked about duration and duration's relationship to perception, and duration's relationship to perception being an act of becoming, rather than the presentation of what has already become, as what Al says. And I mean, the great little story here is when I came here, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I got to know Al, which was a great privilege. He's a wonderful man. And I could quote that back to him and say how much it influenced me. And he was quite chuffed. He's also no longer with us too, so. And may also say that my partner was with me then, as he is now. And I'd like to mention Roy again, because John, my partner, was working in sound. He was beginning to be experimental sound composer. And I working in the sound room there, like you mentioned, was he came in with me, and we worked with Roy together, and Roy gave us some great ideas and great suggestions for John. And at the very same time as well, the Art Institute had David Rosenboom. I don't know if anyone remembers him, but David Rosen did brain waves, where he attached electric devices to musicians. I took the course originally, but it was technically too much for me. So John sat in with me, and that was the beginning of his career in sound. And he's spent all his life in sound. He taught sound art here in the UK, which is one of the reasons we have stayed all these years. So it is actually quite extraordinary how the Art Institute has changed my life. And in a funny way, that's why I went there, because of all these amazing people and work that I saw,
That's great, Denise. I just wanted to follow up on something you were talking about, because it's something that I had noticed in my time there, that the Art Institute, like most of the art world, over the years became more interdisciplinary. And in the early days when I started there, it was like people were very much in their silo, and it was actually to a fault. The way the school was siloed, it was like you were in film and you just did film, and if you wanted to take pictures, still pictures, we had to make this leap to do anything in the photo department, and we put up the same barriers to other disciplines, like painters who wanted to make films couldn't really do that because of this whole silo thing.
I didn't know that.
Well, there was more of it. In fact, a lot of it came out of the idea that, like, well, we have only a finite amount of resources, and we have X number of film students, so we need to protect it for the folks in film. But then that all broke down, and I wish I could say at what year that started to break down, but I remember the conversations and all the major policy changes that were, some of them came from within, but some of it was forced down from above, where we had to start allowing painters to come and make films and sculptors to come and make films, and this sort of just reflected the art world as a whole at large. And so things really start to change. And I even remember, and I don't remember what year, but the MFA program, you no longer became an MFA in film or an MFA in painting. You became an MFA in studio arts. So you could seamlessly go from one discipline to another. And I noticed it within my classes that initially it was all film students, exclusively film students. And by the end, I would say it was maybe a quarter film students, a quarter painters, a quarter photographers. So it was very multidisciplined in that sense. And I think it made for a lot more interesting work. Denise is, I think, a classic example of that, who was able to sort of wiggle her way in from printmaking into the film program just by force of nature. So, yes.
Thank you.
Denise.
I'm a great
Um,
wiggler. So
anyway,
what was the question, Jeff?
I'm sorry.
Wasn't there a question? No.
No.
Oh.
I just wanted to sort of follow up on how you had sort of, evolved from printmaking into film. And, there were many people that after you that did the same thing. In fact, it was a little bit of a point of pride for me when we would get someone from the photo department that would switch their majors. They had taken a film class or two film classes, and they got really excited. And this happened countless times over the years, where they would just switch from either painting or photo to film. And I thought that spoke to the strength of the department and how sort of open and embracing we were.
Was it just as an MFA? Because at BFA, I think you weren't declared, at least when I was
No,
there.
it was it was both, but when I started, and for a very long time, you could not take a class in film. You could not do a production class in film unless you were in the film program.
In undergrad or grad?
Undergrad,
Really?
yes. And it was our way of I mean, part of it was, like I said, the silo mentality, but it was also our way of coordinating the use of the resources. Where, like I had mentioned earlier, we had more demand than we actually had, and we had a lot of facilities. I mean, I've been to other places. Our departmental, facilities for production were substantial, but there was still always more demand than we
That
could
must have
meet.
started when you came in, because when I was there, I could take any class from 76, 77,
Oh,
78.
okay, yeah.
There was no differentiation.
No, maybe it
Yeah,
did.
there wasn't.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the individual departments that made their policies
Huh.
or if it came from within the dean's office, but I remember that was very much the case until it changed, and then it really loosened up, and then the whole nature of the program changed because of that, and I think for the better. So let's move on.
Just a quick question from Carolyn Savage.
Sure.
What dates are you speaking about, Jeff? Do you want to repeat just the year that you were speaking about right now?
You mean when it started to shift?
Yeah.
Yeah. As I had said earlier, it all becomes sort of muddy.
Dates aren't our strong thing.
Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna say that maybe in the late 80s, early 90s is when it really started to break down, and it became more interdisciplinary.
So it wasn't that interdisciplinary when I was there. Maybe it was just beginning.
Yeah, so you're saying it
Maybe I
wasn't
was a catalyst.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I'm sure you and other students who were like sort of pushing the boundaries on things were the catalyst for that change. Yeah.
Yeah, Scott starts in June,
Yeah. And I think maybe as people applied to the program, that demand became obvious. That people didn't want to be pigeonholed into, I just do this or I just do that, but I just want to study studio art and create. So Anyway, let's move on to Ouater Sand, who has an interesting history there because he was there at two different periods. So maybe you could talk about that and talk about what I'm curious about is what change you saw between the first year, because there was like a 10 or 15 year gap between the two periods you were there.
Yes. So first of all, I'm honored to be here at the film collection, the first film collection series. The gap, to answer to your question, the gap between my BFA and MFA is 10 years.
Mhm.
I first start from 1997 with a filmmaking BFA program until I graduate in 2001. At that time, when I first came in, I took interdisciplinary core classes by Richard Berger and another professor, I forgot his name. And so at the program, we learn sculpture, we learn painting, printmaking, photography, and filmmaking. So after the semester, after 1 year of the interdisciplinary course, I choose filmmaking for my major. And I have a chance to learn filmmaking with Larry Jordan, George Kucha, Ernie Gear, Michael Rudnick. And then after I graduated in 2001, I moved to France, tried to get a job in art, but it doesn't work well. So I moved back to California. And then a few years later, I get married. And my wife family living in St. Louis, Missouri. And she asked me try to go to there, live with their family. And we moved in 2008 to St. Louis, Missouri. I live there. I work in the casino for. I work in the casino for.
The casino.
This casino was like an Indian casino.
Yeah, casino
yeah.
where you play money. But I work in a restaurant with as a supervisor in a restaurant. So I get bored in working in the restaurant, and I decide to go back to California, and I apply for MFA program, and I get in 2011.
And what was the discipline that you applied to?
Filmmaking.
Filmmaking.
Yeah. But at the time, I remember most of my BFA than MFA.
Mm.
Yeah, I hang out with painting and printmaking photography student. I'm not hanging out with filmmaking student.
Okay.
Yeah, they're more fun.
They were more fun.
Yeah, they're more fun.
Did they work on your films or act in them or do
No.
participate?
Oh yes,
No.
there's one person who helped me to make one of the short movies.
Yeah, and do you have any sense of how the school changed in those 10 years since from your undergrad to your graduate days?
Yes, I surprised that when I apply to the MF, when I go to school, and we take classes on 3rd Street at the dog patch instead of the 800 Chestnut Street.
Yeah.
That was a change. I disappoint a little bit.
Yeah, because you were very disconnected from the energy of the school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a big critique of the graduate studios when they were out of 3rd Street. Yeah. The students didn't really have a lot of contact with everyone else.
And then we have to move back and forth when we need to.
Right. Yeah.
But I remember the film department, we have the editing room, and then the animation room,
Mhm.
and then Studio 8.
Mhm.
It was quite a memory.
the optical printer room. And then there was the 1/4-inch room, which used to be a broom closet, but they put in a bunch of tape recorders. And they
It was
had a
called
small
the 1/4-inch
synthesizer.
room because it was so small. You had to like squeeze in.
Well, no one knows what 1/4-inch tape is anymore, I
No.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, the film program, not necessarily everywhere, but at the Art Institute, was pretty stable in terms of the technology for many decades. We were using the same equipment that maybe Sidney Peterson was using when he started the department in the 40s. Um, which maybe that's an exaggeration and it wasn't quite that. But I can say that some of the same Bolex cameras were there when I left in 2020 than when I started in 1980. And I think that's sort of an interesting thing about the technology is that really the film technology stayed pretty much the same over decades, even though in the rest of the world it started to change, and we were forced to actually to jump on board at a certain point and embrace digital technology. But there was still, to the very end, there was a appreciation for the what started to be called the analog technology, which I always thought was an amusing term for celluloid. It was the analog as opposed to, which distinguished it from digital. So the end of the program, they were actually, it was, I would say, an equal mix between analog and digital technology. And I thought it was kind of interesting that the students that were coming to the school, even at the very end, were really embracing the analog. It was something that, for years I was hearing, starting in like the year 2000, that film is dead, that nobody was going to be shooting film anymore. And here in 2020, we had students who were still grabbing the Bolex and dying to go out and shoot film. And I thought that was one of the things that made the program unique, because I know a lot of other film departments throughout the country had already abandoned film, celluloid.
Oh, yeah, and they
technology.
even put in the developing, right? For at the end, you could develop your black and white.
We had a very vibrant hand processing facility, and we actually even had, to the very end, we had a machine processor to process black and white, which I think was a big coup for us, and which allowed us to continue to offer celluloid, because it became more and more difficult to find labs and to afford labs, to process your film. So students shot a lot of black and white film, and they either hand processed it or they put it into our machine, and we processed it for free. That was one of the perks of the program. That was what I would tell people. That's where your tuition money is going, because everybody was always moaning about the tuition. It was like, we had facilities that were admirable, and they've made it possible for you to be a self-sufficient filmmaker to the very end.
Right.
Yeah, I remember having developed my film 16 millimeter in the photo department.
Yeah. Well, so when you were there, it was in the photo department, but years later, this evolved over time. They gave us a little space. Space was always sort of a crunch at the Art Institute. They gave us a little space down in the maintenance tunnel, and then we finally graduated to something called Studio X, which was a somewhat condemned space in the sub-basement that flooded often in heavy rains, and it was a little bit scary, and I don't know if I'd call it dangerous, except I heard stories about rats scurrying around in the dark. But Studio X was our film processing facility for both the machine and for hand processing. And it was pretty active right to the very end. Students, in fact, we even had students doing color. their own hand processing of color. So it was the idea was to accommodate whatever people wanted to do, and there were people that were strictly digital, and then people that were still shooting celluloid, and to this day, hopefully they still are. It's still out there. Yeah. Did we want to open it to question, or actually we had a little PowerPoint thing? Maria, do we
You
want
know
to
what?
share
I
that?
think let's open it. I think we should just open it up now so people can. I don't know, rather than the PowerPoint, but maybe we can get
Okay.
that PowerPoint available someplace sometime. Jeff Gunderson.
Yeah, that'd be great if they could post it on. Becky says yes, they'll post it on the website.
Yeah.
So
Oh, cool.
it's
Okay.
an
So
interesting
then,
PowerPoint. It was there was stuff in there that I had never seen. It definitely predates me. So yeah, everyone should take a look at that. Yeah, I'd love to do a Q&A because I have no idea who's watching this, and I'd love to hear from some people that I may or may not remember.
yes.
So
So
I went ahead and got like crazy, and you're now able to unmute yourself and also start your video since we're a smaller group. So just go ahead and ask your question. Unmute yourself and ask your question.
yeah, so that'd be great. Or if you also have something to add to anything that people have been talking about with your own experience. Come on, turn on those video cameras. We want to see you.
Yeah, we want to see your faces.
Can we see them?
We actually, our screen, we can't really see much unless you can rearrange I don't know if there's any way to rearrange the screen.
Maria, Teresa could unpin you.
Oh, unpin us, Maria.
Yeah, and you can put questions in the chat as well if you.
There we go. Yeah, this is good. Yeah. Wow.
Jack,
Yeah,
we want to see. I want to see you, Jack.
I see some faces. Yeah.
And then Stuart Bass,
Stuart was one of my first employees when I was hired. He was my assistant. And I hear about you, Stuart, and your reputation is far and wide. So do you have anything you'd like to add?
It's just I enjoyed working with you. And I remember coming in the mornings, and we had a couple girls that were strippers at the Mitchell Brothers telling their stories from the nights before. I don't know if you remember that. I did.
I do remember, yes. The Art Institute was a pipeline for the Mitchell Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flying equipment and film.
Yeah.
Also, it was a pipeline for all the places on Broadway, because they paid really well. So a lot of students worked there as cocktail waitresses and stuff.
Right.
Not strippers so much.
And stuff.
Yeah,
And
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
I just wanted to share with Studio X because Jeff, you said it was kind of a scary place. For me, the scariest was always to go with hand processing the film, go in the little dark room and then stuff, the film into the bucket. I remember that I was always terrified also to do it wrong, but also just this room was kind of scary. But I have the best memories of hand processing the film there and working on the table. Is it called the Steenbeck, or it was just
flatbed.
The flatbed. Yeah, one of my best memories was doing that. And I was in new genres. Caroline asked before about new genres, and I was able to. And Anjali Sundaram was an adjunct at the time, and we did everything, from camera-less film and then hand processing. And I'm in Miami now. I got a 60mm Bolex here in Miami, dirt cheap. I don't know how, but still shoot film. But the processing, I used to send it even to SFAI to process it there. They did it for a while until, they closed down. It's kind of getting harder now, but it was just magical. It really was. I carry those memories with me.
I'd like to say something seriously about. I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was making my own movies in high school. I would go down to the university and, fake like I was a university student and use their equipment. And I also got into the avant-garde at the time, and was, followed George Kuchar and Brackage and, all these guys. And later I got my bachelor's degree in radio, television, and film. I spent a year in Paris and went to the Centre Georges Pompidou, and they had this incredible program that they were running like twice a week, showing just avant-garde movies starting in 1910 and coming up. It was just an incredible survey. Michael Snow and just all these guys. And when I was looking for my next step after my bachelor's degree, the Art Institute was like, here's James Broughton, here's George Kuchar, here's Larry Jordan, here's these guys really that had a basis in the, out of the Beat Generation and out of like from what's his name, Anger, this incredible background and interesting, weird movies where they're really cutting edge. And to me, it was to work with these people was I was in awe the whole time, and I was just soaking it in. And the thing that I found at the Art Institute, and it wasn't just in filmmaking, but it was in every course, the technical was kind of like in the background. Nobody really talked about lighting and camera. We just talked about trying to get the film in the camera, but it was really about this aesthetic of self-expression and trying to just say things without putting any kind of filters and, see how film can be broken down and show something new. And we had, wonderful teachers like Al Wong, who at the time was projecting on different materials. And it was, that to me was really important. And later on, when I went in and I worked in Hollywood for many years, but I was always going back to this thing where at times, I mean, if you're working on like a TV show, most of it's fairly conventional, but every so often you get a chance to break out and do something kind of nutty. And I was always, it was easy for me. It was like I could expand things in a way that other film editors couldn't do and other film directors couldn't do. And I think it was this Art Institute background of this, just the kind of this philosophy of opening up. And I think that was really important to the film department, and it certainly was there. I mean, I certainly got it.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. What you said, well, first of all, it confirms my earlier statement about it being the golden age of the film program, but also what you said about being in Hollywood. I've heard this from lots of alum over the years, who I would meet up with or have contact with. They would tell me that they would tap into like they weren't making experimental film, obviously, in Hollywood, but that they would tap into that aesthetic and that sensibility that they got while they were at the Art Institute, and that they were able to use it in their commercial work. So it's something that I think a lot of people would agree with there.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a comment also, I want to read from Caroline. You can also unmute yourself, Caroline, but I can read it. I'm in Portland, Maine, and teaching 16mm handmade films and how to use Bollig 16mm in a photo collective. Also, we have a cinema Kinonic, and we'll be programming artist 16mm films. I pronounced that wrong, Caroline. Sorry.
Right. Cool. Great. Can you scroll up the set of people on Maria?
So we
Sometimes you
also
don't-
have someone
You're
opened
unmuted
their
down,
window.
Caroline, did you want to add to that?
Well,
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to say that I belong to a collective that's called the Bakery Photo Collective, and it was started years ago to give access to equipment but it's all still photography, digital and, as we say, analog. Um, and people started, a woman who's going to go on to school in Illinois, she's a filmmaker. So we got together and started talking about it. And so we taught 4 people how to use the Bolex. And we both happened to have non-reflex and reflex. I don't know why we have that equipment, but it's really interesting because we're like goddesses. You know what I mean? Like we know something that they don't know, and it's exciting. But we're hand processing it. We're using caffeinol and beer, I believe. Yeah, and it's the process is that's what it's exciting. People are really interested in not touching buttons all the time, you know, and so but I just have to show you guys something that I found. Ooh. This
Oh, yeah.
is the most absurd thing I bought it. It's called Camp Snap 8. It is not a Super 8 camera. It's a look-alike plastic camera, but you can set it to make experimental film, dark film. You just go, oh, well, photograph. Let's see. Well, no, it's not on. But it's really funny. It's just really funny. And it has a USB and you can hook it up to your computer. And I have yet to get there because I haven't had time to really play with it. But I just bought it because of what it looks like, you know? And so there you go. But I just wanted to let you know that when I was at the Art Institute, I came out of photography. And I took a class of Larry Jordan, and Janice was the TA. And I almost died. So the fun, because all of my photography was about motion, right? And so you can see right behind me, this is what I'm doing now. These very large pictures of using an iPhone panorama. And it's really exciting, actually, because I keep saying it's movement with movement and movement, you know, and time and light. And, you know, people look at me like, wow, you know, but anyway, there you go. So I had a great time at the Art Institute. I graduated in 79, so sort of before changes, but I taught in the 2000s, actually. But I welcome everyone else's opinions, thoughts.
Yeah, we have about 1 more minute left. So any last minute shout outs or memories or any to round this memory collection up. I really like how everyone was chiming in.
Yeah,
Is
and
it
as I
possible
said
you
when we
could
started, there's like no way to, you know, encapsulate the huge number of memories everyone has, but we'll do this again. Marian, sorry I interrupted you.
Oh, I was just wishing Maria could somehow go to the next page of people. So if we wonder who else would be there. We see about
I
15.
can't control your screen, unfortunately, and not everyone has the camera on, so that's probably why
I
you don't
see.
see everyone.
Oh, I
But
see.
thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Deborah, for organizing the talk. Thank you, Jeff, for moderating, Marian, Ouater, and Denise for joining us. We are going to do another film collection talk. Jen is already signed up. We talked about Steve Anker. We talked about so many other people that we want to invite. So we are just going to continue to do the memory collection talks, rotating through the departments. So don't feel that this is the only one. There's going to be more coming. Shout out to Jeff and Becky in the background in the Legacy Foundation. They just pulled off an amazing fundraiser and they are always supporting the talks. Thanks so much. And we're going to have our next spotlight talk in the beginning of March with Matt Linnerup, who was in New Genres when Ouater and I were there. I don't know if you remember Ouater, 2014. He was teaching there. And yeah,
Yes,
so
I remember.
please stay in touch, reach out to us. We're always eager to connect. And thanks so much for joining us today.